All right. Well, good morning. It's good to be with you guys this morning. It's good to see everybody. What a beautiful day God has given us. That hot, humid air that you can wear, I just don't like it. But yesterday morning, I walked outside and it was like, oh, man, I felt like working. And I hadn't felt like that in a long time. So we got a lot of things done yesterday. I hope you did too. It's a great day to do anything. If you got to play golf, be on the water, whatever it was, yesterday was great. This afternoon is going to be equally as beautiful. And we are glad to be able to spend a little bit of that time with you this morning. A lot of things going on at Living Faith right now. Appreciate everybody. Just to clear everything up, an eclipse is when Nathan goes in front of Josh. Okay, just so you know, especially at the buffet. That's what that is, in case that ever happens again. Just so they know, we'll make sure that's on YouTube. Last week we've been looking at King David, and this is our third week of our installment in this King David series. And if you've missed the first two, I want to invite you to go back and get caught up. You can go back and log in on YouTube, or you can go to our website, lfbc.us. You can download the app. You can get it on audio. If you're Bluetooth compatible, I can be talking to you all the way to work. Maybe that scares some of you. I know it probably scares my wife, but I really would love for you to get caught up to kind of be where you were. Because last week, where we left David, he had just made a really bad decision. Okay, he made a really terrible decision, and the result of that decision was lives that were lost. And if you haven't read that story, you should go back in 1 Samuel and read that story, because what happens a lot of times in our lives is when we make a bad decision, when we do something that's wrong, when we do something that kind of puts us on a bad path, when we start kind of going down a pathway, we'll continue kind of going on down that road. Okay, and we call that a downward spiral. And when you begin to spiral kind of downward, you kind of begin to spiral out of control. And if something doesn't happen, if something doesn't come along and intervene in that, then things just really go bad. And so last week we find David, and he had made a really bad decision. It had a terrible result and a really bad consequence. And where we're going to pick the story up today is another decision that he is going to be able to make. And he's right on the verge of making another terrible decision. And that's what we do. When we're on a downward spiral, we continue to kind of want to do that. And what we're going to discover today is that when David begins to go down that path, when David begins to kind of spin out of control, all of a sudden, he is saved by a woman. He is saved by a woman. What I want to remind you of this morning before we get into the content is the golden rule. You guys know the golden rule? You know what the golden rule is? You were taught the golden rule as a kid. Maybe you didn't even learn it in church. Maybe you learned it in school or wherever. But we all know the golden rule, right? The golden rule is do unto others as you would have others do unto you, right? I mean, everybody's heard that. You've taught that. You know that. Maybe you have it hanging up on your refrigerator. Maybe you've got it in your classroom or wherever. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. The golden rule is great until you're mistreated. And then it's like, I'd kind of like to change that a little bit if I could. I'd like to kind of do a rewrite on the golden rule, because then all of a sudden we want to change the rule to something like this. Do unto others as others have done unto you. You ever felt that way? Huh? You ever been mistreated? You ever had something go wrong? Somebody kind of did you wrong or did something the wrong way, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's payback time, okay? Now it's payback time. And see, it gets a little bit tough. And so we kind of want to twist that around. We want to contort that around. We want to, because here's the thing. It's just natural. It just feels natural. Okay, listen, you guys have been around. Some of you have raised boys, okay? But you've all been around like elementary school boys. And April, you know this better, because, you get boys together and you raise the whole house full of, and they punch back, right? And it's like punch, 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 punch. And you're sitting there watching this, and you're going, this is never going to end, is it? I mean, where do you end? Because he hit me first, right? And you hit him second. And now he's got to hit you back. And this goes on and on. There's no end to this, right? Because it just seems natural. When you punch me, I want to punch you back. When you mistreat me, when you trip me, I want to trip you. And so that's this kind of, it comes natural to us. It feels right to mistreat someone that has mistreated you. It's what comes natural to us. And then something happens, and all of a sudden you're put in a situation where you can't treat someone the way they've treated you. Okay? All of a sudden you're put in a situation where somebody mistreats you, and you can't turn it around on them. Okay? Maybe it's a situation at work. Maybe it's a situation with another person. Maybe it's a situation that you're dealing with somebody, and all of a sudden they mistreat you, and you just can't turn it around. Okay? You just can't turn it around. Maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's whatever. You can't just turn that around. And then what happens is you begin to turn that attention to somebody else. Or you get mistreated by an environment. It's just the environment that you're in. It's just the world that you're living in, and you get mistreated by that environment, and so you can't mistreat the environment. You can't mistreat the situation. So you get kind of powered up, and then you mistreat someone in a different environment. And you see, that's what happens. We compensate. I'm going to take it out on you because I can't take it out on him. I'm going to take it out on you because I can't take it out on her. And all of a sudden we compensate. And we find ourselves taking it out on somebody who doesn't even know what happened. Here's the thing. There's a problem with that approach in life. The problem with that approach in life is this, because you're getting even with someone does just that. When somebody does you wrong and you're like, okay, I'm going to get even with them. We're going to get even. Well, what the result of that is you're even. When somebody gets you and then you get them back, then now you're even. And what's the problem with that? Well, now you're even with somebody that you don't even like. Do you really want that? I don't think so. Do you really want to be like someone that you don't like? When they do something to you and you're just like, I don't like that person. I don't like the way they treat me. I don't like the way they're doing this, so I'm going to turn around and do exactly the same thing to them. Does that really make any sense? No, it doesn't. All of a sudden, you're trying to become even with somebody that you don't even like. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do something to someone that you really believe you're probably a little bit ahead of? Because in essence, you have become like someone that you don't even like. And what that does is that brings us to a story about King David that happened a little bit after the event that we shared last week. And now we're going to pick up that story in 1 Samuel chapter 25 and verse 2. And here's the thing. We are just kind of skimming along in the life of David. And listen, you should read your Bible. Okay, if you're not reading it, it's a fantastic read. And you should go back in the Old Testament and read all these stories about David, because what we're doing here just really doesn't do a complete justice. You got to read this whole story, because here's the story that unfolds as we see it. A certain man in Maon who had property there at Carmel was very wealthy. Okay, and we measure wealth in the Old Testament. We measure wealth back in ancient Israel by your livestock. Okay, and this guy had 1,000 goats. He had 3,000 sheep, and he was shearing them in Carmel. Okay, and so all these things are happening, and his name was, you may have called it Nabal if you're a Bible person. I call it Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. His wife's name was Abigail. And here's the thing about Abigail. She was really, really smart. You guys, the ladies group studied her on Wednesday night. I would like to have been a fly on the wall to know if we're going to be going where we're going today. But anyway, she was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband, not so much. Okay, this was not the kind of guy you want to deal with. He was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. Okay, he was a bad dude. He wasn't very nice. And so here's the thing about Nabal. While David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. And why it's important to have this in here, to know this, is that when you're shearing sheep, you're getting ready to make some money, okay? This is like taking cattle to market. This is like the sale that's cashing in. This is when we take everything and we sell it and we get the check, and it's like, yes, this is great. And so he has thousands of livestock, and he's getting ready to shear, and he's going to be taking this to market, and he's going to be selling his product, and so he's getting ready to come into some extra cash. He's getting ready to have extra of everything. And so David has been in this vicinity, and we're going to kind of unfold how this was. So this is what David does. He sends 10 young men, and he says to them, go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name. Okay, be nice. Be nice. And say to him, long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours. Isn't that a nice greeting? I mean, he's being very pleasant here. It's really nice. Now, I hear that it is sheep shearing time. You're getting ready to sell some wool, buddy. I know what's getting ready to happen. A lot of sweaters getting ready to be made. You're getting ready to get some cash. And so we just want to remind you of something, okay? When your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them. And the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. Now, this is what you have to understand. David was traveling with several hundred men, okay? and they had swords and spears, and these guys were feared. They were warriors, and you didn't come around them unless you were ready to do battle with them, and they were very much, they were bad deals. And so they were out there, and they were in the mountains surrounding this valley where this man Nabal's sheep had been grazing all through the grazing seasons. And so David sent his guys down here to remind them of what kind of the scenario, and the fact that he said nothing was missing. Here's the deal. It's twofold. Number one, nobody messed with your sheep, Nabal, okay? Because my boys were out there. The guys were up in the mountains, and if anything come in, anything happened to be bothering your sheep, or we thought anything was going on, we were like, nope, out. Okay, so we kind of, you really didn't ask us to, I understand, but you kind of know that if we weren't there, there's probably things that you would have dealt with. You're probably having a little better payday than what you would have had if my boys hadn't have been guarding your sheep. Okay? And also, my boys are hungry, okay? I'm a little hungry now, and these guys are hungry, and a mutton sandwich sounds really good, and we could have had it, but we didn't do that either, okay? Not only did we protect your sheep, but we didn't take any for ourselves at all. As your own servants, and they will tell you, therefore be favorable toward my men, since we come at a festive time. We know it's payday. Please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them. So when David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name, and then they waited. What's old Nabal going to say? Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is this David? Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Why, he's the guy that's on the run from King Saul. Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Who is this guy? Why should I take my bread and water and the meat that I've slaughtered from my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where? Why would I want to share with you guys?" Okay. Wow. Don't sound like we're going to get any supper out of this, is it? So David's men turned around, and they went back, and when they arrived, they reported every word. Now, David's reaction. What would your reaction be? This was his reaction. David said to his men, "All right, that's the way he wants it. Let's play. Each one of you strap on your sword," and they did. And David strapped on his as well. About 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. Okay? All right, boys, if that's the way Nabal wants to play, then let's play. Well, this is where things get interesting. You see, self-control is like a muscle, and you can wear it out. It's like dieting, okay? You can say, "I'm going to eat, perfect. I'm going to eat everything I should and nothing that I shouldn't," and that's a great idea for a week. And then 2 weeks goes by, and then 3 weeks goes by, and then somebody comes by with a thing of peach ice cream, and they're going, "It's really delicious," and you're like, and you begin to weaken, and patience is like that. And so all of these things begin to kind of wear on us. And so David is in this place, and so he's kind of wore down, and this is what happens. David has been on the run for a while. David has been out in the wilderness living off whatever he can find, whatever rations he can scrape together, and whatever he can get, and his patience is starting to run thin, and it's getting really tough. And when his patience begins to run thin, so is his frustration. And it seems to be possible that his frustration with the situation, possibly, I'm not going to say, but I believe it's King Saul, okay? When he's on the run from King Saul, and he's out there because of King Saul is the reason that he's out in the wilderness. King Saul is the reason he's not getting anything to eat. King Saul is the reason that he's not in the palace where he could be. King Saul, King Saul, King Saul. So he's angry with King Saul. But he can't really do anything to King Saul today. But he can Nabal, okay? He can Nabal. And so here he is. And so he's ready to strap on his swords. He's ready to go down. He's ready to kill everybody. You've heard this before. Hurt people. Hurt people. I've lived around a lot of them. Hurt people. Hurt people. And you can say in this situation that hunted people hunt people. And that's what David was about to do. He was about to go hunting. And his frustration with King Saul and his frustration with his situation was about to be poured out on someone else. As David begins to strap on his sword, he does what we would all do in this situation. He begins to justify what's about to happen. He begins to justify. He did this to me, and I'm going to do this to him, and this is the way this is going to go. Well, we kind of talk ourselves into something. But there are other characters that are involved in the story. And let's go back to verse 14, because this is where Abigail comes into play. One of the servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, David has sent messengers from the wilderness to give our master his greetings. And it didn't go so well, okay? You know your husband. He's kind of nuts. But this is what he did. He hurled insults at them, okay? I heard this. I saw this. Yet these men were very good to us, okay? I'm just telling you, Abigail. I just want you to know that I was out there. I was with the sheep, and we wouldn't have half, okay? I don't know what it would be, but we wouldn't have near the sheep to shear if it weren't for these guys being up there guarding us all the time. The whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. As a matter of fact, verse 16, night and day, these guys, David's men, were a wall around us the whole time. I saw it. I know what they did. The whole time we were herding our sheep near them, they formed a wall and protected us. We didn't even ask them to. Okay? Verse 17. Now, think it over and see what you can do. Because listen, we're talking about David here. Okay? We're talking about David, the warrior. Disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. This is serious. Okay? I know what David's reaction is going to be. I heard what Nabal said to him, and I know kind of a little bit about his spirit, and I know kind of what's going on in his head, and I know how he's going to respond to this, and it's not going to be pretty. Okay, so think it over. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. And so Abigail acted quickly. She is so smart. Okay, she acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, about 60 pounds, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on donkeys. Okay, she gets this together really quick. And then she told her servants, "Go on ahead, I'll follow you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. Smart woman in this situation, I can tell you that. And it goes on. And she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, and here it happens. It's right here that David and his men are descending toward her, and she met them. So here they're coming down. They're coming down out of the ravine. They're coming down into the valley where the shearing is taking place, and it's getting ready to be on. Okay, it's getting ready to happen. And so here they come. And so now we get a little glimpse into David's mind. David had just said to himself, "It's been useless all my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness, that nothing of his was missing. We've been taking care of this guy's sheep. We've been hanging out here, and he won't even give us a sandwich. I mean, come on. He has paid me back." Watch this. Don't miss this. "He has paid me back evil for good." He has paid me back evil for good. That's key. That's key. So this is David's mind. This is what's going on. And then Abigail comes to him. And they meet. Okay? And David says, "May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him." He was going to kill everybody. Okay? It was going to be on. Okay? This is Abigail's reaction. Watch this. When Abigail saw David, the first thing she did was quickly get off her donkey, bow down before David with her face to the ground. Okay? Get down in an act of servant and an act of respect. Okay? She fell at his feet and said this, "Pardon your servant, my Lord, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say." She is so brilliant. Watch what she does here. Verse 25. "Please pay no attention to my Lord, to that wicked man Nabal." Okay? He's a little bit. Well, as a matter of fact, you know what the word Nabal means. He's just like his name. His name means fool. Okay, so you know what his name is anyway. "And folly goes with him. And as for me, your servant, I I wasn't there. I didn't get the message. I wasn't there. I didn't get the men that you sent. I didn't know. And now look what she does. My Lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives, and as you live, watch this. Since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands. Okay? Star Wars fans, you get it? Okay? She puts the Jedi mind trick on him. You're not going to do what you're going to do. You're not going to do this. Okay? The Lord is going to keep you from this. It's not going to happen. So she tells him, the Lord has kept you from bloodshed. The Lord has kept you from avenging yourself with your own hands. May your enemies and all who are intent on harming my Lord be like Nabal. She is brilliant, and she just gets smarter. Well, look at this, verse 27. And let this gift which your servant has brought to my Lord be given to the men who follow you. Look, I brought food. I got stuff here where there's all kinds of food. I'm going to feed you guys, and I want you to take this. And please, please, please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my Lord, because you fight the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. You see, she begins to appeal to David's heart. She begins to appeal to him. See, because here, listen, ladies, okay, come on. You guys can do that thing, okay? And you can even tell us that you're going to do that thing before you do it, and then it still works, okay? You can just tell us, I'm going to do that thing where I make you feel really good about yourself, and then you'll respond, okay? And then you can say, you look so strong. I bet you can carry those trash cans out with one arm. I bet I can. And then here we go, okay? I mean, that's just the way that, the way you wash my car makes it sparkle better than anybody's. I love it when you do that. I think it's great. You really like that? And so then there you go. You can just tell us up front, I'm going to do that thing where I make you feel good about yourself. So she's using that, and it's working, and he's getting the idea. You see, and then she goes on. She's so brilliant. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, she knows about King Saul. The life of my Lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. Bound securely in the bundle. David, listen, come on. Hey, you know who you are. You know what's going on. God's going to protect you. Okay, the word bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. It's like being folded up and tucked away in God's wallet. Okay, it's like being buried in a woman's purse. Okay. Side note. All right, guys, y'all ever have that problem? I do. When Sandy says, "Oh, it's in my purse," and after 25 or 30 minutes of digging, she walks over and goes, "Here it is." All right, you ever have that? Because when it's in there, it's in there. And that's what she's telling David. You will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God, but the lives of your enemies. She is so smart. Look at this. This is great. Look at this. The lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. Oh, she's brilliant. She's brilliant. You see, she takes him back, doesn't she? Your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket. Come on, David. You remember, don't you? Don't you remember? Don't you remember? She takes David back, and his enemies will be hurled away as from a pocket of a sling. And David is transported back to the battle with Goliath when he was completely dependent on God. And next, Abigail projects David to the future. And she says, listen, I know what's getting ready to happen. You're going to be the king of Israel, okay? God's going to restore you. He's going to bless you and bless you and bless you. So when the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he has promised, look, God has promised you these things. He's anointed you. You're going to be what you're going to be. And so when that happens, when the Lord has fulfilled for my Lord every good thing he promised concerning him and has appointed him ruler over Israel, okay? My Lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. David, when this is a story that you're going to tell, when this story is told of what's about to happen right here, what will your story You don't want this to be a story where you avenged yourself and became like my husband and became like Nabal, and it all ended in needless bloodshed. You don't want that, do you? When you look back at that moment in your life, what story will you tell about that moment? Because one day that story is going to be a story that you tell. And what will be your story that you tell? So David comes to his senses in verse 31. He kind of snaps awake, and this is his response to Abigail. Verse 32, I'm sorry. David said to Abigail, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me." He comes to his senses. He comes to his senses. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. You knew what I was about to do, and you came. So otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you. If you, listen, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but I want you to know, because this is what was in my head. This is what's getting ready to happen. If you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak. I was going to kill them all. I was going to kill them all. And you stopped me. And he comes to his senses. And then David accepted her from her hand what she had brought him. Thanks for the groceries, and go home in peace. I have heard your words and granted your request. So Abigail goes home. Remember, she's married to crazy man, okay? So when Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a big banquet, big party like that of a king. He was in high spirits, and he was drunk. Have you ever read the Old Testament? It's fascinating stuff. You really ought to read the Bible. So she told him nothing into daybreak. I'm not going to talk to him now. He's out of his mind. We'll let him sober up in the morning, and we'll see what happens. So Nabal sobers up. She goes to him in the morning, and Nabal was sober. His wife told him all these things. Now, can you imagine having that conversation? Yeah, hey, just so you know, you were rude to that guy, you were ugly to him, and he took care of your sheep, and he was getting ready while you were down here partying and drunk. He was going to kill everybody, including you, all the boys, all the men, all the sheep, all the animals. He wasn't going to leave anything left. But I saved you. Thanks. His heart failed him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. Now, here's the thing. David was about to pay evil for evil. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise be to the Lord, who has upheld my cause against Nabal for treating me with contempt." God took care of it. I didn't have to do it. He has kept his servant from doing wrong, and he has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head. And then David sent word to Abigail. Look what he asked her. How about this? To become his wife. How about that? He sends over a marriage proposal, and what does Abigail do with that marriage proposal? His servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, "David has sent us to you to take you to become his wife." And her response was, she bowed down with her face to the ground and said, "I am your servant, and I am ready to serve you and wash the feet of my Lord's servants." And then she saddles up, verse 42. Did we get that one in? Yes. Abigail quickly got on a donkey, attended by her 5 female servants, went with David's messengers, and became his wife. And they all lived happily ever after. Thank you. I just made that up. You never live happily ever after when you become one of someone's wives. Okay? But that's a story for another time. All right? Let's summarize what we've learned today. Nabal, he returned evil for good. David took care of him. He took care of his sheep. He made sure nothing went missing. He didn't take any for his own. He was good to Nabal, and Nabal returned him with evil. Nabal says, "I'm not going to share with you." David, in response to Nabal, is about to return evil for evil, which kind of makes sense for the culture, right? They live in the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, and you're going to take care of me, or I'm going to take care of you. You punch me, I'll punch you. I mean, that's what we would expect David to do. But then Abigail, she returned evil, or she returns good for evil. She returns good for evil. And the one thing that you can't miss about Abigail is that she was a remarkable lady, and her response was remarkable. And this is what you get as we kind of wind this down and land this thing. Abigail was ahead of her time. Okay? Abigail was ahead of her time, and this is how we know this. Okay? Because Abigail lived in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament and under the Old Covenant, it was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and that's what the Old Testament says, and that's what we read it. But the New Covenant says something different, okay? The New Testament kind of turns things around a little bit. So we fast forward 1,000 years, okay? We fast forward 1,000 years, and we go to Peter, okay? And 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 9, this is what he says. Do not repay evil with evil, or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing. Watch this. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. And look what he does in verse 10. He quotes King David. Peter quotes King David from the Psalms and says, whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. And verse 11, did we get that in? Verse 11 goes forward and says this. I don't want you to miss this. He must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. They must seek peace and pursue it. But they deserve it. They did me wrong. Can I just, no. Well, what about social media? Can I just blow them up on social media? Can I just attack them on social media? No, you can't do that either. It doesn't work that way. It's not cool. It's not cool. Repay evil with blessing. How is it? Where did Peter get? Who was Peter even writing to? Let me tell you. Peter was writing to Christians who were being persecuted. Oh, that's context, isn't it? Peter was writing this to Christians who were being killed for their faith, being persecuted for their faith. And listen, when you're being persecuted, when you're being strung out and drug out and beat up, then it's real easy to get like David was and say, okay, let's strap on the swords. We're just going to strap on the sword. This is what we're going to. Peter said, no. That's not what we do. And you're thinking, Peter's crazy. Where would he get such a crazy idea? Where would he come up with a crazy idea like this? Well, I'll show you where he got it from. Matthew chapter 5, verse 43. It's a man named Jesus. Jesus said, listen, you've read the Old Testament, and so you've heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, okay? But I tell you, this is what got him in trouble. They killed him over this, you see, because they said he speaks with authority. Yeah, he could, because he was, all right? He was. I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Jesus said, I've come and I've turned this whole thing upside down. I'm turning the whole thing upside down. And I'm telling you to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Refusing to respond in like kind. 3 questions for you as we leave. Number 1. Do I really want to be even with someone that I don't even like? Do I really want to be even with somebody that I don't even like? No, you don't. You're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. To be even with someone that you don't like is to be like someone that you don't like. And you don't want to be that person. You see, even is easy. Even is easy. So wouldn't you rather be ahead? Wouldn't you rather be ahead? You see, you get ahead, catch this now, you get ahead by refusing to get even. Okay? You get ahead by refusing to get even. Question number 2, what will be your story? When your life is a story that you tell, what will be the story that you tell? When you reflect back on your life, when people have done you wrong, when you're sitting there bouncing that grandkid on your knee, when you're sitting there with that baby on your lap, and they begin to ask you questions, and they come home from school and they say, Mommy, they did this to me and it is bad, and I'm really upset, and I want to go back and I want to get them. When your life is a story that you tell, what will be the story that you tell? What will be your story? David was just a short distance away from a very different kind of story. He was just a few moments away from a very different kind of story. So what will be your story? Number 3. What would it look like for me to return good for evil? What does that look like for you? What does that look like for you? What would it look like for me to return good for evil? What would it look like to become a blessing to someone who has hurt you? What does it look like to become a blessing to someone that has hurt you? Because listen, here's something. Because you say, I'm just not going to do anything. Okay? Well, to do nothing is mercy. I am not going to do to you what you deserve. I am not going to do to you what you deserve. That's mercy. But to actually do something that they don't deserve, you know what that is? That's grace. That's grace. To actually do something that they don't deserve, that's grace. And listen to this. Don't miss this. This is where our story and the story of salvation intersect. Okay? This is where our story and the story of salvation intersects. Okay? This is your best opportunity. It is your best opportunity to be like your Father. This is where our story intersects with the greatest story ever told. And the greatest story ever told was when God returned good for evil. All right? It's the greatest story ever told. God gave His Son for our sin. You see, generosity and compassion has kind of become American. We see somebody that has a need and it's like, here's $1. Okay? Somebody comes and says, can you help me out? Yeah, here you go. And was like, oh yeah, I'll donate to that, or I'll give to that, or I'll help out with that, or I'll do that. It's just America has a compassionate heart, and that's kind of the heartbeat of America. Is we're just a compassionate people. But returning good for evil, intentionally returning good to someone that has done you wrong, you see, that's not predictable. That's remarkable. That's remarkable. It sets you apart. And listen. Don't miss this. It's my favorite passage of Scripture. That you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And this is what sets you apart. It sets you free. It sets you free. Because here's the deal. Because I know this. I know this. Here's the core of the message for some people. Until you can return good for evil to the person that has hurt you, that person controls you. Until you can do that, that person controls you. Until you can return good for evil, that person controls you. And because you're like David, you're just riding down that ravine, you're rehearsing all the things that you want to do to get them back. I just want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do. And the only way to be free is to be a blessing and to extend grace. What will be your story? What will be your story? Do precisely for others what they don't deserve, and then you will be like your Father. Did you catch that? Do precisely for others what they do not deserve, and then you will be like your Heavenly Father. And I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you're thinking. It's easy for you, big boy. You can stand up there and you got notes on your iPad and you can rehearse this and you know how to say this, and then you're going to go get something to eat later, and I'm going back to my life. And you don't know what I've been through, and you don't know what I'm thinking, and you don't know who it is, and you don't know my situation. I get you. You don't know my ex, you don't know my boss, you don't know my dad. Listen to me. I would never stand up here. I would never stand up here and anchor this in my own authority, because I'm in the same boat. Listen, I've been through it, okay? There's been moments that I've left, that I've gone away so mad, so angry, that I wanted to turn evil for evil, okay? Been so angry, it's like I can get this people, I can do this, I can come at them. It's so easy to do, I get that. So I don't stand here today on my own authority. I anchor this on what my Father in heaven has done for me and what He's done for you. Okay? It's not on me. It's from Him. Okay? And this is why. This is why. 1 Peter 3:9. Edwin, can we throw that back up? It's because you were called. Okay? It's because to this you were called. It's what we're called to do. When we've accepted Christ as our Savior, when we said yes to that, listen, I'm a sinner. Okay? I'm not perfect, and I deserve hell for my sin. But God had a different plan. He gave me a gift that I did not deserve. That is the grace of God. He gave me the gift of Christ's crucifixion. Jesus died on the cross for my sin. When I put my trust and faith in that, my sins are forgiven. And I don't deserve that. He gave to me something that I don't deserve. And it's on that authority that I'm able to give to others things that they don't deserve. It's not on my own. It's on His. It's because that's what we were called to do. So my closing question for you is, what does that look like? What does that look like in your circumstance? Let me pray for you. Father, we come before you this morning and we thank you that you loved us enough that you were willing to send your one and only Son to die on the cross for us. And Father, in the situations that we confront evil in our world, when we're done wrong, when we face up to things, when we go through difficult times, Father, our intuition, our gut reaction is to confront evil with evil. But you, Father, have given us a different spirit. You have spoken into us a different return, that we return evil with good. And we can't do that on our own. We can't do that in our own humanity. It requires the power of the Holy Spirit living in us. And Father, I don't know where anybody is, but you do. You number the hairs on our head in your spare time. You know us. You know our hearts. You know what we're dealing with. And you know right now what we need to do. Give us the strength. Give us the courage to do just that. Help us to respond and to reflect in this time of invitation. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Please stand.
Open up the skies of mercy. Rain down the cleansing flood. Healing waters rise around us. Hear our cries, Lord, let them rise. It's your kindness, Lord, that leads us to repentance. Your favor, Lord, is our desire. It's your beauty, Lord, that makes us stand in silence. And your love is better than life. We can feel your mercy falling. You are turning our hearts back again. Hear our praises rise to heaven. Draw us near, Lord, meet us here. It's your kindness, Lord, that leads us to repentance. Your favor, Lord, is our desire. It's your beauty, Lord, that makes us stand in silence. Your love is better than life. Open up the skies of mercy. Rain down the cleansing flood. Healing waters rise around us. Hear our cries, Lord.